All right, we're about to commence our second tutorial for English First Language. I just want to invite you now as we start to settle in, and I want to welcome you all to our second tutorial on English First Language. And tonight we're going to look at Unit 2. Just to get us started, as a reminder, it is Monday evening and it's 8 o'clock, and I want to applaud you for your presence tonight. And as I welcome you, I want to extend hearty participation. Enjoy the tutorial. Use this platform to make good of the time that we have together. Tonight's tutorial is going to focus in the main on reading and viewing, our second module outcome. And I want to invite you to, before you introduce yourselves and say who you are out there, to use group chat and to use Q&A if you're watching from home. And feel free to post your questions and your queries and comments during the course of this time. So, I'm glad to say that we have 3 CLCs joining us, and I want to ask you now to take this opportunity just to introduce yourselves, and we'll start with Lighthouse Ministries at Paro. If you can unmute yourself, get onto the video by turning your camera on if you're able to. Just introduce yourself. If not, write to us and just say who's out there. Welcome to Paro tonight. Okay, if you're unable to access the audio, we're going to move to Salt River. We're just going to invite the CLCs again. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and to show us who you are. Perhaps the Bay can come in while Salt River is setting up. Okay, we have someone on our screen from the Bay.
Oi. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm Irma and I'm at the Bay.
Sure, welcome, Irma. Can you hear us?
Perfectly well.
Okay, welcome and enjoy tonight's tutorial.
Thank you.
I'm not too sure if Paro can come in again, but whoever's out there, welcome to tonight. And I look forward to your participation. And we know that we have William Ross at Salt River tonight. So welcome, William, even if we can't see you right now. We hope that you can join us soon. All right. I'm going to continue with our first task. And we're just going to look at what are we going to do tonight. What is this unit going to focus on? All right. I'm going to engage in an activity where we're going to look at some feedback on discussion forum 1 that you've just participated in. We're going to do 2 activities on reading and viewing in preparation for the next part of our module. We're also going to focus on CAPS and what it has to say regarding reading and viewing. We'll look at the module outcome 2 in particular in preparation for the next assessment. and we'll look briefly at the requirements for the next assessment. Then we'll have some time for some questions, some discussion and conclusion as we look back again at our first few activities as we conclude the tutorial on reading and viewing based on Unit 2. I will invite you to take note of all that you find in front of you, and as we proceed, feel free to record your thoughts and to send in your comments as we go along. Welcome to Salt River. I see William has now joined us and his camera seems to be working well. All right, to kick off tonight, let's begin by just easing into what it is that we are focusing on tonight, reading and viewing. I'm going to play you an audio recording of a dialogue between two people. I'd like you to listen to the audio. I'm going to play it twice over. You may have to turn up your volume on your side in order to hear it clearly. And if you do have trouble, please let us know. And while you listen, I want you to engage in some kind of note-taking. So if you do remember last time we met, we talked about listening and speaking, and that a useful tool when listening is to take notes. So I invite you, while you listen to this audio, take some notes in form of a mind map or keywords or whatever you might use that is best for you. And then I want you to draw up at least 3 level 1, 2, and 3 questions that you could ask from the content that you hear from the audio recording. I just want you to draw up 1 question per level. We will come back to this activity a little later. So I'd like you to settle into now listening to the audio. Please give me feedback if you can't hear it, and we'll play it again if there are difficulties. So I'm going to bring it up now.
Reading exposes learners to vocabulary and language they're not familiar with. My students often worry about failing to understand everything and try to use the dictionary. Looking up all the unknown words from the text is very slow and boring. They often need a lot of time just to get past a few sentences. Sometimes even the dictionary does not help. My students sometimes tell me that they do understand the meaning of all the individual words in the sentence, but the overall meaning is still unclear. It discourages them from further reading because they feel the effort invested is not worth the outcome.
What did you learn about reading on your own teacher training course?
I learned that it was important to structure a reading task, not to overwhelm learners by unknown language, but help them focus on what is important and make the task look doable. Sometimes even pre-teaching a few words can do the trick. I found out that it was not always effective to read and understand everything in detail, but using strategies such as skimming or scanning can be more productive.
Have you applied what you learnt on your training course to your own classes?
I often use scanning and skimming with my students in class. I have found out that if they focus on looking for a specific piece of information or reading a passage very quickly, they actually worry less about not understanding everything. I try to make clear that I do not expect them to study the text in detail, but want them to do a particular task. I think it is useful to introduce reading by, for example, asking learners what they know about the topic, doing a pre-reading task from the course book, or pre-teaching some key words from the text.
How do you help students who have problems with reading?
If students want to improve their reading skills, It is important for them to stay in regular contact with the language. This is often a problem because reading is rarely seen as an enjoyable activity. I am enthusiastic about using graded readers for introducing more reading. Readers work with a limited range of vocabulary and language, and that is why learners can follow the story in the book and understand everything without using the dictionary. Such reading often gives learners a sense of achievement, which can motivate further reading. Sometimes it is also useful to look for a link between reading skills learners have already built in their first language and reading in the foreign language.
How do you integrate reading with the teaching of other skills?
I think learners do much more reading during the lesson than we sometimes realise. It is often the type of reading that has been integrated with other skills. For example, they often need to read instructions before they start doing a speaking or listening exercise, or they make notes and then need to read them to be able to report back. I also think there is a natural partnership between reading and writing. All stages of editing a text actually include reading. Reading exposes learners to vocabulary and language they're not familiar with. My students often worry about failing to understand everything and try to use the dictionary. Looking up all the unknown words from the text is very slow and boring. They often need a lot of time just to get past a few sentences. Sometimes even the dictionary does not help. My students sometimes tell me that they do understand the meaning of all the individual words in the sentence, but the overall meaning is still unclear. It discourages them from further reading because they feel the effort invested is not worth the outcome.
What did you learn about reading on your own teacher training course?
I learned that it was important to structure a reading task, not to overwhelm learners by unknown language, but help them focus on what is important and make the task look doable. Sometimes even pre-teaching a few words can do the trick. I found out that it was not always effective to read and understand everything in detail, but using strategies such as skimming or scanning can be more productive.
Have you applied what you learnt on your training course to your own classes?
I often use scanning and skimming with my students in class. I have found out that if they focus on looking for a specific piece of information or reading a passage very quickly, they actually worry less about not understanding everything. I try to make clear that I do not expect them to study the text in detail, but want them to do a particular task. I think it is useful to introduce reading by, for example, asking learners what they know about the topic, doing a pre-reading task from the course book, or pre-teaching some key words from the text.
How do you help students who have problems with reading?
If students want to improve their reading skills, it is important for them to stay in regular contact with the language. This is often a problem because reading is rarely seen as an enjoyable activity. I am enthusiastic about using graded readers for introducing more reading. Readers work with a limited range of vocabulary and language, and that is why learners can follow the story in the book and understand everything without using the dictionary. Such reading often gives learners a sense of achievement, which can motivate further reading. Sometimes it is also useful to look for a link between reading skills learners have already built in their first language and reading in the foreign language.
How do you integrate reading with the teaching of other skills?
I think learners do much more reading during the lesson than we sometimes realise. It is often the type of reading that has been integrated with other skills. For example, they often need to read instructions before they start doing a speaking or listening exercise, or they make notes and then need to read them to be able to report back. I also think there is a natural partnership between reading and writing. All stages of editing a text actually include reading.
Okay, we've heard the audio twice over, and I've asked you to make notes as you listen to it, and I've asked you to draw up 3 questions. One level 1 question, a level 2, and a level 3 question. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's talk about what I mean by levels. Drawing from your past experience, or if you haven't, we are referring to Bloom's levels of thinking, Bloom's taxonomy. So I'm just going to ask you very quickly, in terms of level 1, which has to do with knowledge, what kind of question could you have drawn up based on the audio text you heard? What kind of question could you have drawn up on understanding what you heard in terms of a level 2 question regarding comprehension? And a level 3 question is about applying that knowledge. So how could you draw up a question from what you heard in terms of application? As you think about that, I just want to draw your attention to this pyramid that can be used across all learning at all levels, but we kind of focused more on the knowledge, comprehension, and to some extent application and analysis at the intermediate phase level, growing a broader base from foundation phase, which focuses a lot about information and comprehension, towards application and analysis. So very quick feedback. You're welcome to write your feedback, but let's go to who's with us. I'm not sure if Salt River is able to comment. If your mic is working now, do indicate. Sure. William is going to use group chat to give us a question, and I will share it through the broadcast during the course of this time. So William is going to write his question that he drew up on knowledge, and then the Bay, we can have your question on comprehension. So let me ask Irma if you can unmute and just share your question very quickly.
My question is, can you explain to which two skills are closely related?
Repeat that for us.
Which two skills are closely related?
Which two skills are closely related? Would you consider that a comprehension question?
Barely, maybe more knowledge.
Sure. And Ross, your question is a level 1 question, and you say, why was the dictionary not helpful? Okay. So, Salt River, you are saying, why was the dictionary not helpful? And it's not now about answering questions, but it's about developing questions, drawing up questions, using Bloom in terms of level. Can you all hear me? Can I ask the Bay to switch? Okay, we just had some feedback, and I think now we are fine. So, using Bloom's taxonomy, one can develop levels of questions based on a text. Okay, let's move along now to some feedback from discussion forum 1. And here again, as an activity, I would like to, in terms of giving you feedback and some discussion around it, very briefly look at a KWL approach to doing this. May I ask you on a piece of paper to write down 3 columns and label each K, W, and L. Please indicate to me whether you can hear me. at some point, perhaps if you can just type in whether you can hear me. Thank you. I would like you to quickly engage in a KWL activity that is going to focus on our first assignment that has just been concluded. Under the K, I want you to write, what did you know? Very quickly. What did you already know regarding the teaching strategies for listening and speaking? Under L, under the W, what would you still like to know, especially as a post activity now? And under L, what did you learn? What did you learn from doing this task as a unit with among each of the respondents, the participants that took part in the discussion forum? I'm just going to give you a minute or two just to synthesize your experience of the discussion forum that we've just undertaken. All right, when you are ready to give me some feedback, feel free to just participate at any point. And you're quite welcome to say you didn't know anything prior to the discussion forum. I don't think any of us would have had no prior knowledge, but if that was the case for you and the discussion forum was your first interaction with looking at strategies in teaching, listening, and speaking, and understanding of written and spoken texts, then you're welcome to say that. It would also be useful if you post a question or two on group chat on what you would still like to know so that it's recorded and we can follow up. For me, I certainly learned a number of things, but I'm keen to hear what you learned. So let's start. Perhaps Salt River, you can use this opportunity now to write in, since we don't seem to have a visual on you. Okay, so according to William, I take it that that was what oh, sorry. Okay, let's go to the Bay. I see Irma is responding through group chat. Irma, are you able to speak at all?
I think so.
Okay, go for it.
I would like to learn more and to have specific tools how you can evaluate what is right for a certain level. I would really like to learn more about it.
A most applicable question. Okay, you can unmute now. Okay, a most applicable question, the whole aspect of assessment and marking, and an objective rubric for assessing listening and speaking. A very useful question, and an area that we will focus on during the next assignment or two, especially assignment 3, when we look at assessments in particular, and drawing up fair, transparent, and objective rubrics when assessing something as subjective as language. So a useful question to keep in mind. Salt River, William has asked, he says, I knew that kids in townships struggle with English home language as it's not their first. So as an English first additional approach had to be utilized with shorter texts and slightly simpler sentences. And I think you did a remarkable presentation, William, in putting us into a context that sometimes we're so well aware of, but so difficult to tackle. And I think you led the conversation very rigorously and drew others into the debate as you opened up the whole aspect of home language English versus first additional in the home language classroom. So thanks for that, and thanks for sharing that prior knowledge and that context, which certainly was followed through by a number of other writers and responses. So thanks for that. Irma, you're also saying what was too easy and what was too difficult. Can you just explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Sometimes there is a text or a listening piece, and to know this is the right level. It's not too hard, it's not too easy, but just right. So to have some tools to assess what is exactly right. Because the school where I'm at now, they don't specifically use textbooks, and even a textbook can be too hard or too easy.
Wow. Another very poignant and useful contribution where pitching the material is one of the hardest innate things that comes over time for teachers to do, where you choose materials that are appropriate. The assignment that we're going to be embarking on aims to glimpse into that experience and exploration. I will chat about that during the course of this tutorial. So thanks for that, and certainly so did I. As William submits, we've learned together a plethora of strategies that exist in a diverse country as ours, in diverse classrooms. And I think what I'd like to highlight as strengths that came through the discussion, the various strategies that involve the whole child, the academic, the non-academic, the using kinesthetic and visual approaches, using old school traditional drills to very, very contemporary modern outdoor tasks like following maps and directions and so forth. So thanks for submitting that the diverse approaches one can use in terms of teaching, listening and speaking. And I think also that, like we heard in the audio, the integratedness of the language, that those strategies spill over into other aspects and other skills as well, and you don't learn things in compartments. And I hope that's come through as well, because those strategies can be used for reading, for writing, for speaking, and for thinking, for grammar, and so forth. So as much as we're focusing on each of these skills independently and discreetly, we must also see that it is holistic. And with that, I'm going to move on to the rest of our evening and look at, let me just go to what we're going to be focusing on in the next few weeks. Module Outcome 2, which is about promoting proficiency in reading and viewing. And these very key concepts of genre, purpose, audience, processes of reading, which our second assignment is going to unravel. So what is our second assignment? It forms 30% of your progressional requirements for this module, and it's about reading and viewing. You're going to submit your answer as a table. You're going to submit your answer as a table as you look to developing a reading program over a 4-week period. And we're specifically honing into a grade 5 class of plus minus 30 pupils. And each of these aspects within the question is very relevant in drawing up this reading program, because Group work is going to come in, different strategies are going to be focused on different materials. It's going to be appropriate for a grade 5 class. It's going to be looked into materials like books and visual and written texts. You're going to also submit ideas on identifying reading levels. As Irma has brought up the whole question of how do you pitch material for a specific class. It's actually not as easy as we think, because each class is made up of individual learners at various reading levels. And as teachers, we can only best provide individual pedagogy and individual strategies in groups, especially in larger classes. So how do we do that? How do we plan for that? What kind of comprehension and reading skills would students or pupils need to have at a grade 5 class level? You're going to present your answer as a table, but I urge you to support your table with other material in the form of texts, plans, reading schemes, comprehension, whatever it is, resources, perhaps even references for reading material or reading programs that might be at the schools. So I wish you well. Use headings to present your reading program. The assignment is due on the 21st of August, and I want you to enjoy this search, because it's not just appropriate for the requirements for this module, but it's in preparation for your teaching. And so to assist in getting you started, we're going to look at what does CAPS have to say, because much of this is also located in CAPS, although it could be limiting, but it gives you a springboard to start. So what are the CAPS requirements for reading and viewing? You will find this on page 10 and 11, and I urge you at this stage to look under Funda, under the lessons subpage, on some activities that I've put there for you to engage in unraveling the CAPS document. On page 10 and 11 of your CAPS document, I've quoted this section verbatim from the CAPS document. It talks about the reading process. It's the CAPS English Home Language document that I'm referring to. It says that children at intermediate phase level need to engage in a reading process, which consists of pre-reading, reading, and post-reading stages. The activities that you need to draw up for each of these stages include, for pre-reading, the following. It's not an exhaustive list. These are some of the activities that you can plan around doing pre-reading tasks. In terms of reading itself, this is what CAPS says, that activities need to be planned around the actual reading process. And I'd like to draw your attention to the audio text that you listened to, that we will talk to again if we have some time later. And then post-reading, as part of the reading process, activities that draw conclusions, that confirm understanding, that includes evaluation, use of ideas in extending thinking. I'm going to go through these 3 stages in some detail now, and I want to engage you in an activity that's going to form much of your thinking for classroom practice, especially useful for your assignment, but you are also going to engage in an example. Okay, so let's look at a pre-reading task that you could engage in to activate your prior knowledge, I'm going to put up a text and we're going to answer these 3 questions. I'm going to give you a pre-reading activity based on your prior knowledge. You are going to read the text and highlight some key points to work out its meaning. And as a post-reading activity, I want you to draw up a quick table with the headings to confirm your understanding of the text. And hopefully we will have some time for feedback. So, as we start this process of reading, I'm going to put up an extract from page 10 of the CAPS document. And using the steps within the reading process, you are going to answer the following questions. What pre-reading task could you engage in to activate your prior knowledge of the text that is going to come up soon? And just to recap, we're looking at the first bullet as an example of an activity for a pre-reading task, looking at prior knowledge. So when I give you the text, what would your prior knowledge be that you could activate from your memory? Second task, in this text, whilst reading it, I would like you just to jot down some key points very quickly as you skim and scan as quick reading tools to work out the meaning of the text. And here I'm using the second to last bullet as a strategy. So we're going to annotate some key points while reading. And then as a third task, a post-reading activity, I'd like you to draw a quick table with some headings to confirm your understanding of the text. All right, so drawing from the activities that CAPS has suggested, the first bullet says you can make a graphic organizer to outline your key ideas. So this time we will use a quick table as a graphic organizer. And here's the text. I'm going to give you about 3 to 4 minutes, if not a little bit more, to quickly scan through the text in front of you and then engage in those 3 steps that form the reading process. Okay. Can I have an indication of how far you are? Salt River, if you could just write down for me in group chat how far you have progressed with those 3 stages. And Irma at the Bay, do you need more time? Okay, just a minute or so. All right, let's start with some quick feedback while William is finishing up. You can unmute Irma and let's have some chat.
Me too.
I like the different types of reading that I mentioned.
Sorry, I didn't hear you there.
In the text, they mentioned a lot of different types of reading you can do. Class reading, reading with, reading to, individual reading, group reading, guided reading.
And that was part of your prior knowledge. Are you saying you knew about that beforehand?
I'm saying that is one of the things that really speaks to me in this text. So that is kind of more in the table. That would be one column, types of reading.
Okay, so that would be part of your post-reading activity in terms of understanding what you read?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. What about you, William? Okay, William's going to write his response since he's unable to speak to us, and I will read it out when he's able to. While he's doing that, I just want to draw your attention on 2 things. If I had to ask you what level of question, and let me bring it up, have I posed to you? Let me just bring up in terms of screen share. An earlier slide. All right, just bear with me. I want to come up to the slide on Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, what level of questions have I provided for you to answer in terms of how I phrased the pre-reading question, the reading question, and the post-reading question? Would you say that was a question based on synthesis, evaluation, or lower down on the hierarchy of knowledge and comprehension? Just a quick feedback from Irma. Gonna need to unmute.
To me, the questions are more in the lower half of it than the higher half.
Did you say knowledge and comprehension?
Knowledge comprehension, maybe application, but not any higher.
Sure. Okay. Now, it's very interesting that you answer such, and it's not wrong. Absolutely, you're on target. The text was higher order thinking, high level of engagement in terms of what you read, in terms of pitching the activity. I pitched it according to postgraduate students preparing for their ADT. However, in drawing up those 3 questions, I actually posed a knowledge and comprehension question in terms of understanding what you already know and highlight some key points and draw a table in terms of your understanding. So it's going to be quite interesting when you choose your texts that a simple text can be used for higher order thinking, while a complex text can also be used for simple knowledge questions and comprehension. I also asked you to draw a table. You read a piece of writing and you had to respond by drawing a table. You're going to engage in that very thought process when you are going to engage in your assignment. So bear that in mind. You are synthesizing, and that is why Irma is quite right. You're synthesizing your reading and applying your knowledge to a new situation, presenting your information through the analysis and evaluation of the text as a table. So it's quite complex thinking involved at our level, of course. All right, so let's get back to our PowerPoint as we draw the evening to a conclusion. And I'd like you to, just as I bring it up, to think about any questions or comments that you'd like to pose at this point in terms of engaging with this activity in readiness for the classroom as well as in preparation for the assignment. Okay, so in terms of our feedback, if there aren't any more comments, I'd just like to read what William has submitted. In terms of his pre-reading activity, the title was obvious to him, and he says he will ask learners to look at the amount of paragraphs and number it. He will ask them why the last paragraph is so short and the purpose it serves. I'm not too sure whether, yes, that's quite right, but it's not all on prior knowledge. This has included other activities as a pre-reading task. In terms of the second part of the question, the actual reading, he would ask what informs us of the saying, how you read is how you write. So he's quoting and asking some questions on it. It also taught him, he says, that peer learning is conducive to outcomes-based methods. Okay, and that extends the whole activity into something that he could engage with as a post-reading task in terms of what is outcomes-based and how do peers act, peer learning become friendly to outcomes-based methods. Okay, so that's a quick summary of William's feedback. And then just to move along, in conclusion to our tutorial tonight, I hope the activities that we've engaged in gives you a glimpse into the kind of thinking that you're going to need as we get into the heart of the module and into the first essay or assignment that you're going to submit as a table. I'm going to urge you again to look at your module outline for the rubric that's going to be used in assessing your assignment. Engage in the activities that are presented on the lessons subpage. In preparation, look at the resources, the books and so forth, CAPS in particular. Read your messages and the announcements that come to you, and look out for the next assignment. I draw your attention to our next tutorial, which is going to focus on writing and presenting and looking at an essay in terms of what writing strategies one could employ in the classroom in preparation for teaching and learning. And this is also going to focus heavily on assessment. Our next tutorial is on Monday, the 15th of September, and we're going to be at the heart of our semester by then. The tutorial is much earlier than tonight, and I really want to applaud you for making yourself available at this part of the evening. Monday, the 15th, we'll start at 6 o'clock. And with that, I want to wish you everything of the best. I know that English Home Language is not your only module that you're doing this semester, so sky's your limit, and what you put in is what you will get out. All the best for the rest of the semester. Good evening.